thank you, and welcome to Sports Vision Pros. I'm Dr. Keith Smithson. Today, very exciting day for me. Today is going to be our first ever goalie summit with two incredible individuals that are going to talk a little bit about goaltending, training, testing, and just some amazing experience that we can talk about that hopefully will help out other coaches, other trainers, and goalies, as to what's out there in vision testing, and vision performance. So I'm Dr. Keith Smithson. You know me. You've seen me before. I'm going to introduce two incredible individuals here. Zach Thornton here is our head coach, goalie coach at DC United. He began his illustrious playing career at Loyola University. He was actually lacrosse and goaltender for soccer and lacrosse, which is something you don't see very often, a two-sport athlete. He's actually in their Hall of Fame for both sports, which is pretty impressive. He's had 9 caps for the U.S. national team, played previously in Portugal, and 16 seasons in MLS, winning an MLS Cup in 1998 with the Chicago Fire. He was a 6-time MLS All-Star and named Goalkeeper of the Year twice. He is now our head goaltender coach at DC United and leads U.S. national team goalkeeper and DC United goalkeeper Bill Hamid, who himself won Goalkeeper of the Year in MLS in 2014. So thanks for being here, Zach. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime.
We also have Zach. We have Scott Murray as well. And Scott played collegiate hockey at Lake Superior State University. After his pro career, he moved immediately to the pro coaching ranks and has been our goaltending coach with our Stanley Cup champion Washington Capitals, starting his 2nd season this season. Before that, spent 4 seasons with our AHL affiliate, the Hershey Bears, working with 5-time All-Star and 2016 Vezina Trophy winner Braden Holtby, as well as Philip Grubauer, Vitek Vanasek, and Phoenix Copley, leading most of them to career seasons. So incredible knowledge and incredible experience for both of you individuals. And I just thought it was going to be really fun to talk about goaltending and how it's very different between two sports, but there's also some pretty cool similarities as well. So thanks both of you for being here with us today.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it.
So first of all, let me say thank you to both of you because I was a collegiate defender at the University of Delaware playing soccer, and goalie was always my best friend because you guys are the ones that cleaned up all the mistakes I made. So thanks to goaltenders in general, but I was curious to hear from both of you. It takes a very special mentality, very special individual to become a goaltender. So what started both of your roads to becoming goaltenders?
Basically, I think I was about 5 years old, and I think the goalie that was playing got hurt. So just to keep the practice going, I said, I'll step in for a little bit. Everyone's going to take a turn. And then that was kind of it.
And you were hooked.
Oh, yeah. I was hooked. I was good enough at it. And then that was about that.
For me, it was cool because I love the idea of the cool colored jerseys. You were different than the rest of your team, and you had those really cool gloves you got to wear. And then I stopped growing, and I became vertically challenged. So goaltending for me stopped very early in my soccer career. What about you, Scott?
For me, my father was my coach in minor hockey, and to be honest with you, I had tried it a couple of times and liked it, but I played primarily forward or defense in hockey. But there was one summer where my father was coaching, and we actually got new gear for the Minor Hockey Association. It was goalie gear, and at that point, I wanted to be the first one, the only one to try it. So that's kind of when I made the switch. I was a little older. I was probably 10, 11 years old when I made the switch. But it was due to the new goalie gear for sure.
Yeah, it's always the gear, man. You guys have that cool stuff. Look at it. NHL, sure. You get those custom painted masks and stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, yeah. We needed those, Zach, right?
Exactly.
So tell me a little about, we're going to get into vision mostly today and the visual aspects of goaltending, but tell me about the visual journey for both of you. Did you wear glasses, contacts? Did you have any experience with visual challenges as you were a goaltender and going up through the ranks? Zach, I know you wear contact lenses.
Yeah, I've worn glasses since I think 3rd grade. And then for sports, the rec specs, kind of the padded goggles back in the day.
Yeah, sure.
So I wore those, and I think we were in a soccer tournament in Minnesota in 6th grade, and we lost in the semifinals because they fogged up. Not because they fogged up, but it didn't help that my glasses fogged up. So that was kind of a little bit of an eye opener, and I started wearing contacts in 9th grade. Had a ton of trouble getting them in early on, but then after that, it was kind of smooth sailing from there, and never looked back.
Yeah. Would you say there was a big difference going from glasses to contacts? Did you notice the game differently?
Huge. Yeah. The total vision, with glasses, you look at the side of your eye, it looks a little different, but obviously with contact, total vision is just so much better.
Yeah, and you mentioned the fogging issue. That's something we constantly have as a challenge with athletes who have to wear sports glasses for either medical reasons or just because they can't get the lens in and out, which can be certainly challenging for a lot of athletes. So, I mean, there are obviously ways to fit glasses to make them more successful. We have different types of sport glasses versus sport goggles that you and I kind of grew up with. The sport glass option is still safe, but gives a lot more airflow. And so we see a lot of our MLB guys that are still wearing sports glasses, but we don't see sports glasses primarily in soccer. It's one of those sports you don't see. Hockey, same. You got the shield and things.
For soccer, yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
Based on Zach's success in his career, I probably should have put some glasses on. I haven't worn glasses. I haven't had glasses my entire life. Now it's probably getting to that point. But I did do some vision training back when I played. But as far as glasses are concerned, I have not had glasses yet, but I probably could use them. If I was playing now, I probably would have them in contacts, I mean, obviously contacts or some type of eye surgery to make sure my sight was very clear. Obviously, we've had goalies a couple of our goalies for sure that have gone through some of the surgeries and huge difference for them.
So it's an important question because a lot of times we talk to athletes in multiple different sports that say, I don't need to get tested because I have 20/20 vision, or my vision is clear, I see perfectly. And as all three of us know, because I've known you gentlemen both for many years now, 20/20 is just not enough. I mean, it's really sort of the tip of the iceberg is saying that the athlete can see clearly. And I guess both of your sports obviously very different, but how important would you say clarity is in your sport, seeing the target clearly? It's certainly something that's important, but is it premier, Zach, to see the ball that's coming at you and laces or seams or rotation like a sport like baseball?
For sure. You need to, check out the trajectory of the ball, the flight, if it's bending, if it's flat, and be able to pick it up clearly, quickly, and then make an accurate decision on how to deal with it. Yeah, I definitely that's paramount for sure. Yeah,
it's a great point. I mean, sometimes those balls knuckle a little bit. I've seen, behind the goal, and
you're going to catch it, you're going to punch it. There's a lot of things, you have to figure out, in an instant. The better the vision, the better you'll be off.
Sure. And Scott, in your case, the vision was always clear. So with, you saying, look, I want to take it to the next level as a goaltender and do something, more than the guy next to me. If the vision is clear, what else can you do? You did some levels of basic training, you said, kind of growing up or going through the youth levels. What was that? What did that look like?
Well, I just read some stuff online when it came out and just tried to do some of that while I was playing college and added that into my training. It didn't help as I was a backup for most of my career, but I got into it a little bit. But I mean, I've really started to learn about and digested it, especially through Holtz and our guys that are in DC and Hershey and kind of moving up through the pro ranks. So the importance is huge. And if you look at our game now, and Zach, it'd be interesting to talk about soccer, with hockey, because it's kind of the same thing. Other than, for the most part, our object comes from the ground primarily. I mean, there's the odd time where it comes up in the air and it gets out of the air, but primarily that puck comes from low to high. Whereas yours can come from low to high, but it also can come from the head or the chest or wherever. So there's a little bit of a difference as far as where that ball comes from, as far as how high it is. So there's been a big push and a big evolution in net as far as how we see as goalies versus just, vision and how well we pick things up, but how we hold our head so that we can see things clearly, because everything does come up and everything that's dangerous to us is down and in front. So versus to the side, which it might be in goal or in soccer or wherever, because the net's so small. So everything for us is dangerous is down and in front, and everything comes low to high. So tracking has become a massive conversation and a massive evolution in the game in the last 2-3 years, and how you hold your head. So vision and how you kind of place your head to get the best vision, along with some of those other attributes, reading, picking up the trajectory, picking up where it's going in traffic, all that stuff. A massive part. To the clearer you see it and the clearer you see, obviously it's a huge part of what we do in our game.
That's interesting.
Yeah, how does that jive with soccer a little bit, Zach? I know it's obviously something that the science is different. We look at things differently. As Scott mentioned, you're in a different postural position. The size of the target's different. It's traveling over a much longer distance, obviously, a slap shot from the blue line versus, a cross that's coming from, 30 yards away and being headed by someone, at the penalty spot. So a very different kind of dynamic. There's obviously some similarities as well in the fact that we have, multiple object tracking. There's multiple athletes and players in front of you. There's the screening, there's the distraction. But what would you say is sort of a difference between soccer goaltending and hockey goaltending from your perspective, Zach?
Kind of what Scott said about not necessarily just being from the floor. You have crosses, like you said, comes from across, so it's at an angle. Now you have to, I always teach, find it first with your eyes, see it first, get your head around first, see it with your head, get there, see it first, then move your feet. So you can get in the proper position to deal with it. Obviously, for through balls, your positioning is very important, and this is where I think it's really crucial, because especially younger keepers have trouble with decision making on crosses and through balls. And I think seeing it, as we talked about, processing it, the flight of the ball, the trajectory, the speed, the distance. Am I going to come? Am I not going to come? I think those are kind of the huge things that we teach to the younger kids have trouble with. But most of them, just with time and experience, they kind of get over it for the most part. But it's definitely like something that the younger kids struggle with.
Yeah, I wonder, that'd be a cool study for all of us, is how similar are those goaltending traits, and can you take one sport and really relate it to the other? I mean, Zach has amazing experience in being a lacrosse and goalie and soccer goalie, and two different, kind of environments with smaller targets, larger targets, and again, that difference of distance. Scott, I don't know if you were on hand, but our first baseman with the Nationals, Ryan Zimmerman, came over and took some slap shots from Ovi one day and put the hockey gear on, because I think the mechanical movement of catching the ball at first base was kind of like that.
His glove hand was lights out. His glove hand was lights out.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I mean, it was really a neat thing to see.
Blocker side needed some development, but glove hand was fine.
So not signing him anytime soon as a backup goaltender, no?
No, but he seems like an unbelievable guy in the room. So.
He's a great dude, yeah. And I have to show, I actually had my OVOs this morning just to get myself in the spirit for today's conversation. So I'm working on my glove hand as well here. So we'll see how it goes. So Zach, you bring up a great point. So when we talk about vision testing and really vision testing for sports, we break it down into really generally three components. So, we look at clarity, which we kind of touched on first. How clearly do you see a target? How clearly can you see the puck, the ball, the football? And if clarity is off, then we obviously manage it with a lot of things that people are familiar with: glasses, contact lenses, laser and refractive surgery. So that's kind of our first third that says, okay, well, now I see the target. And then we have this muscular component that we evaluate. And that's really things like your eye tracking, as Scott talked about. How fast do the eyes move? How well and how synchronized are those eye movements? There's the depth perception component, which I think is something that I have always, kind of, had a question about. And so that's why I wanted to kind of hit both of you as well, is there's something different to the fact that when you have your goaltender who's taking a slap shot, Zach, and he has to get in front of that target, right? He just has to get there first, right? There's a certain part of getting your body, as Zach said, in front of the ball so that if you miss the catch, you play it, right? As opposed to, let's say, a football player or a baseball player who actually needs to physically catch the target, not necessarily just get in front of it, right? There's a get in front of it component, but then you have that glove hand. And in Zach's point, you have punching or catching of a soccer ball. So there is still that depth perception component of picking up that target in flight if we're actually going to catch the target versus just getting there first, right? So we can measure things like reaction timing and getting there, but then also that depth perception component of actually physically making the catch. So that's kind of our second phase, is that muscular component. And then to Zach's point, visual processing, decision-making. We can actually now quantify the neurological part of the game and the decision-making speed for an athlete, which is very different in both of your sports, right? I mean, there's a part where your goalies, Scott, are going to potentially come out of the crease or not. There's a point where Zach's goalies have to decide, there's a go, no go. Am I going to stay here on my line, or am I going to come off and try to punch that ball at the penalty spot? And that decision-making is something that obviously relates to a lot of time and experience in the sport, but we can also look at that at a young age and quantify that for athletes. And if it's a deficiency, fix it, enhance it when the athlete's 15, and not necessarily have that be a limitation when they're trying to make their high school team or move on to maybe collegiate ranks in their sport. So those three aspects are something that I wanted to kind of tie into a little bit. I think we talked about the clarity side of it, but how important is that muscular phase? Scott, you talked about tracking. What about the depth perception side of it and really having good, fast, muscular reaction? Is that really critical in your game?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think no one is seeing puck and reading kind of where it's going, which is part, they kind of go hand in hand. If you see it, well, and that's part of why I talked about tracking and where you hold your head is we talk about seeing it clearly. That gives you a better ability to make a decision on it. And then the next part is making that decision in that muscle reaction. And what you'll see a lot of guys doing, if they don't see it clearly, they don't, have the right muscle reaction, they don't make the right decision, you start to see them go early. And in our game, a lot of it's getting out of the way of the puck to create holes for the goal to go in. And that's where you see a big problem for young kids is they want to start to go and react before that decision's made. And obviously, if they're starting to do that a lot, then they're probably not seeing the puck clearly. So to me, it starts with the seeing it, then making a decision on it, then making the proper muscle reaction. And that's obviously the final piece for us. It's catching or blocking or kicking but it's also a big part of it is moving our whole body there because there's not a ton of net to begin with. Our muscle reaction is a little different. And that's why decision making is so important because for us, a lot of times we get out of the way to create the goal. If we stay in the way long enough and give ourselves a chance to make the right decision, now we don't get out of the way and we just close this much smaller hole versus making one first and then trying to close up a bigger one. So that muscle reaction is huge, but to me, it starts with seeing it. And then obviously that decision and giving yourself a chance to make a decision versus making it mentally first and going regardless.
Yeah, so, that's awesome.
It's huge.
Scott, Zach, what about you with the muscular phase, the depth perception and just physically seeing it part? How critical is that?
Yeah, obviously, I always say, see it first, see it clearly, and then see it off their foot. I call it on the front foot. See off their foot if it's a through ball, ready to come, ready not to come, and processing that decision, like I said earlier, quickly and accurately. Make the correct decision, make it quick. Because the longer you wait to make a decision, it's probably not going to be the right decision the longer you wait.
I'm really curious to know, Zach. I mean, you were obviously in the league for quite a while and played in the net yourself for so many years. Has any of that thought changed since when you were actually playing, what you were telling yourself and what you were taught to what you're now teaching Bill?
Obviously, a lot of the techniques have changed, but the mentality and the philosophy are the same. Making your decisions, carrying, catching, crosses, coming, not getting set, moving your feet. And as far as what Scott was talking about, as far as getting in line, I've noticed that if a player doesn't see it well, he's either not set when the ball's struck, or he's on his heels. He's kind of like no man's land. He's kind of like panicking because I can't see it, and he's on his heels, and he can't make a play.
Yeah, that's great. So the one thing that we kind of go back to when we talk about goaltending, we had this amazing Stanley Cup run a couple years back, Scott, and the thing we talk about fondly here in DC is the save, right? Braden making this incredible save that has been replayed a million times, and we still look at it and say, how does that happen? And, it's not just luck, right? It's not just being in the right place at the right time by chance. It goes into, I think a lot of different components. I'm really curious to hear from you, but, obviously I think there's a visual component to that. I think there's a positional component to that and really sort of reading the game. But, how do you break down something like the save? It's not just being there by luck, is it?
Well, I mean, if you kind of go back a couple steps and what happened, obviously they rim the puck in. It takes a bad bounce off the board. So he's on the right post on his blocker post. It goes by him unexpectedly because it's supposed to go behind the net. And now it's a bit of a surprise. It's hard to prepare for that. He probably was more prepared because of the scenario, because of what the stage was. He was probably more prepared for it, but he couldn't predict it. And so now it goes across his body and it goes to a guy that's in a really good position to shoot and score. And he's got to get position on that, right? He's got it. So if we talk about what Zach talked about, if you don't see it clearly, you probably don't get your feet set. So he saw it pretty well, and he's got really good vision, Holtz. So he saw it well in front of him, even though it wasn't predictable because it's a hard one to predict. But he saw it pretty clear and clear enough that he got his feet set. Because in most scenarios, if you don't see it well and you don't get your feet out in that one, when that guy makes the lateral pass, he's not even in the net to make that save. So A, he saw it clearly. B, he gets his feet set like Zach talked about. So now he's in at least some type of position to make that save on the first shot, which is a pretty dangerous one. So now when that pass is made, he's not still going towards the guy who's shooting the puck or passing the puck. He's got his feet set. So at least he has an ability to come back. Now he makes the pass. That's where tracking and seeing it and tracking properly as a goalie, I think helped him out. So if you saw what happened, he made the pass across, and most goalies in that scenario, if you don't see it well, would start to reach with their leg first versus falling back and following it with his head. So now he can get around on it and reach with his stick. If they drop and reach first and don't really see it, now they don't have a chance to get their head. Now he can't get his upper body. And normally when that happens, if you don't see it and you reach and you don't track it, your upper body stays on the same angle that the puck came from. So he got his feet set. He saw it come across, got his feet set. Now he sees it go across his body another way. Now he tracks it, keeps his head down, which allows his upper body to rotate. That allows him to get his stick there. If he does, obviously if there's a number of mistakes in there for him, it's a hard one to save just because he wouldn't be in position. He wouldn't have a chance to get something in front of it. And then the luck is that the guy shot it in a position where his stick was. But there's definitely some components there that allow, if we talk about decision making, seeing it, decision making, and then that physical action, which is tracking, starts with tracking in the net, and then that muscle reaction to put what he sees in front of the puck. So that's kind of how I would break it down.
And what's really, really cool today is that, we can quantify so many different areas of vision outside of this 2020 thing we were talking about, that, we have incredible technologies out there, like the Right Eye, NeuroTracker, Synaptic. There are companies like that we can test athletes on that can quantify things like reaction timing in literally milliseconds. So you can look at, those different quantifications, and then we can move into training and interventions. As Scott mentioned, some basic levels of training, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and some more higher tech levels of training. But, ultimately having those quantifications are great when you're dealing with, youth and professional elite athletes to find ways to improve, right? I mean, if we're at a level where we are with these gentlemen and the guys they're working with, they are the best in the world at what they do. So how do we give them a notch above the next? And, obviously we can't talk about individual players and testing and things like that, but I can tell you, just as we were talking about Braden Holtby there, the test that I've seen from him and some of the numbers are literally the highest that I've ever seen in the world. We have a test that has over 20,000 people, 20,000 elite athletes, not just general people, but 20,000 elite athletes. And he is still the highest score I've ever seen. So, those things are not by chance and they're not by accident. And some of these are God-given qualities that athletes certainly just have. It's great to be able to quantify them to stack up the rest of the team against where those athletes are. And it's also great for finding, levels of, let's call them deficiencies, in trying to maximize the potential for a youth athlete or a professional athlete. So, Zach, we see a lot of the same stuff with Bill. Bill just seems to be in the right place at the right time. He's got an incredible nose for the game, but some of his reaction speed, saves are just off the charts amazing. He just seems to get there where you don't know that anyone else could have. Does he do that the same sort of way?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think Bill. He likes the strobe light training in the cage. You've seen that at RFK. Yeah. He likes to do that multiple times a week. He likes his vision during training, not having a clear vision of sight to the ball, so deflection or seeing it late where he has to make a reaction. He likes for me to incorporate those kind of things. And we also do a drill where Bill can't see where the ball's coming from, but he sees the forward. He knows where the two forwards are. That kind of thing. He can't see where the ball's coming from, then he has to react. So, yeah, I mean, we do train it a bit. He does do a lot of visual training. But again, in the game, like Bill, he just has a sense for it and has a way to do it. But his training definitely helps him put himself in the right position to make the play.
Yeah, you have a great point. So distraction training, I've talked to Scott a lot that as well. Is there's so many times that our goalies are being screened intentionally, in hockey, and it's just part of the game, right? So how do we train something like distractibility and getting screened, or having someone in Bill's case standing in front of him on a corner kick and just trying to be a pest? How do we create distraction so that we can get the athlete to avoid distraction, or at least play through distraction? What are some of your drills on that, Scott?
Well, obviously you have people that we can bring out on the ice to do that. They have to take pucks in the ankles
Yeah.
And sometimes it depends on who's shooting in the throat. So, well, we got guys that will come out and screen and get in ways in different, get in the way in different scenarios, whether it's a one-person screen, a two-person screen, crossing. You get into practice situations where you get some of that. And in the game, sometimes you got sick away. And like Zach talked about, there's times in games where it's Sammy or Holtz or any of our goalies that they try to see, and you try to do your best to see. And that's obviously number one, because if you can see, at least you can make a decision. But there's sometimes where they got to connect dots and figure out, okay, and it might be a little bit more frequent in soccer. Like, this guy's standing here, this guy's standing here, there's this much net here. Like, I got to connect dots and at least cover this space. So there's that too. So there's definitely a bunch. And I mean, our game is definitely, and I'd be curious to see where soccer's going. Especially, I'm assuming in hockey, like, there's been an offensive push. Like, back in it coaching could really control defense, but now that offensive push is starting to come. And with that offensive push, how do you make it harder on the goaltender to work is distract and create delay? Well, how do you do that? Get in front of them. So there's definitely a big push to get people in front in many different ways. And then obviously you have our defenders that try to get them out of the way. So that's another distraction. So it'd be interesting to see what soccer's going through as far as that offensive, because I mean, obviously you look at Manchester City, who's scoring a lot of goals. So I'm assuming there'd be some more of an offensive push. What does that entail for distraction and taking eyes away? But I mean, there's so many different drills. You can bring out dummies, you can bring out screen boards, you can bring out a bunch of different stuff. You can throw distractions on them. So you just try to be as creative as possible to create those scenarios that it makes it hard for them.
Yeah. What about distraction in soccer, Zach? Is there things and tricks you have on that side as well?
Yeah, I mean, like you can put people there, you can put dummies there. You can put a dummy on an angle, like in the ground, so it's like a ramp. You can do things like that. A rebound board. Just anything that creates a deflection or discontinues his line of sight. So he sees it, doesn't see it, sees it. Those kind of things.
Yeah. And Scott, you talked about a couple of things, and Zach, you had mentioned the strobe training glasses. That's something that all of us have been familiar with, and we've seen several generations of those through the last 20 years that I've been in practice. But as a way of sort of occluding the target from the athlete and having them make decisions with less visual information, where they're only seeing it in bits and pieces along its trajectory. But there's also some basic things that youth can do with their coaches, and Scott, we've talked about that a little bit, where there's mini pucks that sometimes we see, get fired at different goalies. There's different colored balls where the athlete is required to do something different with each ball, not necessarily because that's part of their game, but that engages the neurological part and the decision-making part. So, one thing that I've always, encouraged is with the teams and trainers and coaches that I've worked with, is trying to find a way to incorporate vision training in a drill that you're doing already. So, we're not adding time to your coaching regimen. You have a fixed amount of time that you're getting with these athletes. We don't want to send them off to a vision training room that's off the ice or off the soccer field, but finding ways to incorporate a visual skill in a drill that you're doing already, as Zach mentioned, makes the most sense in the world to me, because there you're just saying, okay, this is a drill we're doing anyway. We're doing crosses, we're coming out, catching, punching. We're doing some things for our soccer goalies, and let's just add a visual component into that. Let's say that every time the ball comes and it's got a different color that you punch or you catch, and that changes things a little bit. Or if I hold up a number, you have to do something different. Or, we're creative in what we come up with, and that's obviously up to the coach. But, we have a lot of youth coaches across the country that are training both of your athletes that are the young levels that are going to be the next goalie that Scott's training, or the next goalie that Bill's training. And, if they're dealing with a U12 soccer team out there, they don't have to have a pair of $1,200 sports glasses to do the training. They can think through a way to make it more visually demanding and still get those same effects with kind of the low tech options. Yeah?
Yeah, totally agree with that. Totally agree.
Cool.
For sure. I mean, in our sport, and Zach, I'd be nice to hear your thoughts. Like, here's kind of how I see it for us goaltenders: is the goal is to get position. If we get position on the puck, that gives us the best chance to make a save. That's, in the end, if he's in position, he gives himself the best chance to make a save. You have to move to get to that position. But number one, you have to see in order to move properly, in order to get position. So, I mean, anything you can do to improve position or improve vision no matter what it is. I mean, it just like anything in life, you would never go across the street without looking first. It drives movement, it drives position, and without position, you can't make saves. So to me, anything you can do to improve vision that's number one, and that's the foundation to start to have those other things fall in line.
Yeah, so I mean, I say it almost every day. I'm sure they get tired of me hearing it in practice.
No.
How fast can you really move your feet and be set and truly be set? Not leaning, truly be set. How fast can you move your feet? And obviously, you have to see it to move your feet to get there to be set. I mean, I think if that's a huge part of goalkeeping for shots, for crosses, for through balls, all those things. Truly moving your feet as quickly as possible. With the speed of the game, has to be in speed with the game. You can't be slow moving your feet. You have to move your feet with the speed of the game, set, and then go from there.
It's so similar compared to hockey, because that being set is so huge, and being truly set.
Truly set.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, again, I started this kind of thinking around, the fact that I played soccer, never played hockey, but, I saw the similarities in the sport, and that's one of the kind of things that I get a chance to do day to day in my practice is that, I have the great privilege of working with essentially, every team we have in DC. So I think through the visual skills of each player, each sport, and each position in that sport as to what are the visual components to a quarterback in football, or someone hitting a baseball, or someone saving a puck. And as Scott mentioned earlier, it can be very different depending on the location that the target's coming from, based on the position of the athlete themselves. As he mentioned, most of his sport is in down gaze. Most of our NBA players' sport is in up gaze. So, we're testing them in up gaze versus testing our hockey players in down gaze. So, thinking through each sport is just really awesome. And it's so fun for me to think through that side of it. So it's really kind of neat to hear the similarities between goaltending in both of your sports, obviously the differences as well. But, I didn't know what I was going to hear. So really kind of, it's fascinating to hear so much similarity there between the position, getting yourself right, the eye tracking, making sure that you're there first before, you can make the save. So you have to see the puck, you have to get there, but it all has to come together in split seconds.
To what Scott was saying, obviously our net's a little bigger, so your angles are so much more important. I mean, if you're too much near post, you get with the far post, and at this level, if you're not in the right spot, the guys can pick you apart. And again, that's visual processing, seeing where the ball is, how far away it is, how close it is, what angle it is. Your angles are extremely important. The good thing is, by the time they get to the pros, they're pretty good at that. Maybe a couple tweaks here and there. You don't have to completely start from scratch, but angles are extremely important.
How fast is a shot coming in MLS, Zach? What's the speed of a shot?
70 to 80 to 90.
Yeah.
So depending on who's hitting it.
Yeah, sure.
and then they can hit a 70 or 75 and it can have a bend on it or a knuckle on it. It's not just a flat ball. There's
you got a small net to deal with too.
And I've seen you hit balls pre-game to Bill, Zach. You got a foot on you as well. So I know those are up in those 90 categories when I see you drilling balls at him. Scott, what about a slap shot? How fast are they coming from Ovi?
I mean, it's 85 to 105. I mean, it's got some pace on it. It's got some pace, but again, the net's smaller. But our reaction time's a little bit, we get a little, because of the pace and because of how close it normally gets in, it can get in. We don't have to deal with bends, but we do have to deal with
the pace.
Yeah, the pace and the less reaction time. And, I find a big problem is when guys start to over-anticipate becomes a problem. You know what I mean? You start to lose that trust and vision, and then you start to over-anticipate, and that's where either you guess and you create a hole, or you start to move early and you create a hole. So that's really a huge part of vision and tracking is to be able to see it and make a good decision versus making an early decision mentally. So there's for sure some unique kind of differences, but similarities in our game.
Very similar. Don't guess. Trust yourself. Get to the right spot and trust yourself, no matter the distance. Get there, trust yourself, and make the play.
For sure.
Well, what's cool about that is, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a study in hockey or soccer to the reaction time or the processing speed, things like that we talked about. But there are studies in baseball which I think have a similarity here, in that we know, from the pitching mound to the batter, that it takes 0.3 of a second for that athlete to process a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. So a 90-mile-an-hour target that batter has 0.3 of a second, which is actually faster than you can physically blink. They have 0.3 of a second neurologically to decide if that's a ball or strike, fastball or curveball, am I going to swing or not swing? So that decision-making phase that comes between I recognize the target, I saw the spin, I picked it up in space, so I have the depth perception, and now I have to make that decision before it's too late, relates specifically to both of what you're talking about as well. And so if we can do things to maximize that or buy those athletes a 10th, just a 10th of a second in a 0.3 of a second window, that's the difference between getting a fist on it or a blocker on it. But, I think those 10ths of a second, obviously sound like they make a difference.
It definitely matter, for sure. Any advantage you can get.
Yeah. And it's, that's been an improvement in our game. And obviously coupled with, and there's been, I'm sure that there's techniques, Zach, that you've seen improve along the years, but just our physical, when we talk about physical reaction, there's been a huge improvement as far as the efficiency and how well goalies get in the way of a puck now, versus before where they used, they'd react with a small piece of a limb. Now it's getting their whole body. So that reaction time that allows that to happen has gotten quicker over the years. So there is an improvement in our level, but for sure that is an advantage. The more that you can pick up time, the more efficient you can be.
Yeah, that's what I say all the time. We're always trying to gain time, gain space, and be efficient with your footwork. Get across the goal, get there as efficient as possible. That way you'll gain time to see it, process it, and make the play.
For sure.
Everything's happening quicker. These kids are better at a younger age. I mean, I see the training that's happening, not just in this country, but globally. And, when I played, Division I college soccer, I wouldn't step on the field for JV teams right now. With the skill level that these kids have, it's incredible. I mean, the talent level and the ability to have personalized training and, year-round training. I think we practiced, once, maybe a week, once or twice a week, through my travel soccer all the way through college, had games on the weekend. And these kids are, really at an elite level very early in their careers. So, how early would you say is too early? What's the right time for an athlete to investigate things like visual performance testing or training? Is there too early? When should kids, ask their doctor if they can do this type of vision testing or training?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I think it's been an evolution in sport is when you talk about, the components of an athlete, you have their physical side, you have their mental side, and you have their emotional side. Like I think a lot of kids probably pick up too late on the last two. And if you look at the physical side, the vision is now part of it, to be honest with you, and it connects the mental side. So, I mean, if you're going to pick up a weight or if you're going to do some type of movement exercise, why wouldn't you do some type of vision exercise? I think it's a part of the whole package now, to be honest with you. And, I don't think starting it earlier is going to hurt, for sure.
To piggyback Scott, I just think the time when you decide to get serious about it, if you're starting to lift weights, if you're starting to do any kind of other training besides actual soccer or hockey part, as long as when you start to get serious about it, it should be a part of your training routine. So,
take-home message. I know we're getting ready to wrap up here a little bit, but what's your take-home message to that goaltender out there who thought the equipment was really cool and wanted to put it on or got stuck in there practice because the goalie got hurt and kind of think they might like this? So you have aspiring goalies out there. What's your take-home for them on just a message you would have to them or their coaches to take them to the next level?
I would just say if you enjoy it and you like being in net and you're not afraid of it, it's something you like, just stick with it. Keep training, keep growing with it. Sky's the limit.
For sure. And I think I agree 100%. And it is one position, that you can have a massive impact on the game, positive or negative. And so if guys like having, an impact, it's a great position to kind of change the direction of a game or keep a direction in the game. So that's the fun part for us, is that we've got an impact to change, whether it's the mindset of our team, the confidence of our team. You have a big impact on the game one way or the other. So that's the fun part about playing that, for sure.
I love that positive spin. That's a goalie for you right there, because ultimately people would say, look, it's a stressful position, right? I mean, I let that goal in, and I've seen, the goalies on the teams that I coach that, head down, oh my gosh, I let the team down. Well, it's not that I let the team down. It's that I have an impact on the game. I'm that critical to my team that, mistakes are going to happen. You have to have a short memory and move on with the play, right?
For sure.
That's a great point. Short memory and It won't be the last goal you let in. So just get on with it. Just get on with it.
That's right. Hey, everyone has to do their job. The offense got to put the puck in the net too, right?
For
Not
sure.
every game's going to end up 0-0.
If you want to be a goalie coach, the coach's room is so much fun after a game that you lose to. Hey, I got a quick question for you, Zach, and it might be it's kind of with vision, but it's kind of outside just because I'm curious. Your scenario, and we get into it a bit in net and hockey, but your scenario is you might not see a ton of action in a game.
Yes.
How does Bill stay, is there certain things that he does to kind of stay focused or stay engaged mentally so that when that opportunity comes, and normally it's not, it's a hard opportunity or difficult, is there some things that he does to stay engaged mentally?
I mean, obviously at this point in time in their career, by the time they've made it professional, they have an idea. Obviously, though, that happens, a lot during the game. You might not have anything to do to the 80th minute and you're called on to make the game-winning save. Each keeper's different. Some keepers take the game in increments, 15-minute increments, 15, 15, 15. They kind of do it that way. Bill, he will practice his quick movement and set from center, angle, as the ball is, But also you have to stay engaged because at our level, it's called active defending. You have to keep your defenders in the proper spot, if a forward's creeping or they're bringing another forward. So you're always kind of engaged. You're actively defending. So those kind of things, I think, keep the guys pretty engaged. But yeah, that's definitely a question that you hear a lot. And again, younger kids struggle with that, staying engaged for the full length of the game.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Is that similar with your guys then too, Scott?
For sure. I mean, obviously you can have a couple different layouts for a goaltender. One's you're busy all the time, so you're physically automatically into it because you're just seeing so much action. And then the other one was where your team's playing well, and then you have to make saves when you haven't seen a ton of physical action. So those types of things, you hope they're doing all the time, and that helps you stay engaged. But it's a different game versus it being just a physical game, and the mental kind of comes along with it. The mental game's got to drive, and the emotional part of the game has to drive you and make sure that you're ready for when stuff goes the other way.
It's the fan, they say, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and Zach, I think you make a great point there too. The communication, right? Having to communicate with your defenders, your midfield players, your center ice players. But in my experience, back through youth soccer all the way up through to where I'm coaching now, teams lean on their goaltenders, and the goaltender, because they see the entire field or ice or whatever it might be, have that ability to communicate and constantly communicate with players and positioning. And most teams that I remember, our goaltender was our captain, or one of our captains at least. So I think the team looks to the goaltender for leadership. So having that ability to see the game and constantly communicate, maybe one of those ways that they can stay engaged is, keep having constructive talk with the team.
For sure. Always putting your players in the right position, defensively, offensively, just being a rock back there. And you got to hear the voice. And I was telling them, let them hear you back there. That way they know you're back there. They know that they don't have to worry about the space behind because you're there. So just keep communicating with the guys.
Yeah, I love it.
Really good point.
Well, we're going to have to get rolling here because I know Zach has a meeting.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, the difficulty. Scott, it was nice meeting you. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yeah, same with you, Zach, and best of luck. And hopefully you guys give us some insight on how to get things back together here.
I hope so. So looking forward to this talk, guys. Take it easy.
Yeah,
right,
thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate it. And thank you both for being here today on Sports Vision Pros. The question we get a lot is, now that we know vision's important, how do we get it tested? How do we get it assessed? And so I would just encourage you to learn a little bit more on sportsvisionpros.com. If your team doctor or a doctor you've worked with as a youth isn't aware of these kind of things, send them to our academy. There's a lot of education out there for coaches, trainers, and for doctors themselves to help take that player and that team to the next level. So thank you all for being here today. And thanks to Zach Thornton and Scott Murray, two amazing guys and incredible goaltender coaches. So until next time on Sports Vision Pros, Dr. Keith Smithson.